The steam rose from the silver coffee urn as Sarah Martinez lifted the heavy pot, her movements precise and unremarkable. Around the mahogany conference table, 12 of the most powerful military minds in the Pentagon leaned over classified briefing folders, their voices a low rumble of strategic discussion. General Patterson tapped his pen against the polished wood. The brass nameplate caught the overhead lighting as he addressed the room. We have 17 confirmed casualties from the botched extraction in Somalia. The intelligence was compromised from the start. Sarah moved clockwise around the table, filling each coffee cup with practiced efficiency. Her black uniform blazer bore no insignia, no rank, nothing to suggest she was anything more than civilian contract staff. The security badge clipped to her pocket read Support Services in bold red letters. Admiral Chen leaned back in his leather chair, accepting his coffee with barely a glance. The SEAL team was inserted at 0300 hours. Radio contact was lost 6 minutes after touchdown. We found their equipment scattered across a 2-mile radius. The coffee pot trembled slightly in Sarah's grip. She had been there. She had been the one calling for extraction when the ambush started. But her face remained perfectly neutral as she continued her rounds. Colonel Brooks shifted his weight forward. Whoever planned this operation clearly underestimated the enemy's intelligence network. The whole thing reads like amateur hour. Sarah bit the inside of her cheek. She had planned that operation. Every detail, every contingency, every escape route. The intelligence failure had come from somewhere else entirely, but she couldn't exactly interrupt the briefing to correct a full-bird colonel. $20 says it was another female-led mission, Colonel Reeves muttered to his aide. They keep pushing these diversity initiatives without considering actual capability. The aide nodded with a thin smile. What do you expect when you put someone in charge just because they check the right boxes? Sarah's knuckles went white around the coffee pot handle. She had lost 3 good operators in Somalia, including her spotter who had saved her life twice before bleeding out in her arms. The memory of his final words still woke her at 3 in the morning. General Patterson cleared his throat. The mission commander's after-action report indicates significant tactical errors. Command structure breakdown under pressure. Sarah filled the final cup and stepped back against the wall, becoming part of the furniture again. The men around the table continued their analysis, completely unaware that the mission commander they were criticizing stood less than 10 feet away, holding their coffee pot. Admiral Chen opened a manila folder. The operator in question has a call sign of Oracle 9. Impressive kill record, but this Somalia debacle raises serious questions about leadership under fire. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Sarah felt every muscle in her body tense as her operational call sign hung in the air like a live grenade. Oracle 9 was known to exactly 3 people in this room, but none of them had ever seen her face outside of mission photos. Colonel Brooks snorted. Oracle 9 sounds like some kind of video game nonsense. These special operations units are getting too creative with their call signs. If only you knew, Sarah thought, remembering the 47 confirmed kills that had earned her that designation. Oracle, because she could predict enemy movement patterns with supernatural accuracy. 9, because she was the 9th sniper in naval special warfare history to achieve that level of psychological operations integration. The coffee pot felt heavier with each passing second. She had been standing in this room for 6 weeks, invisible and dismissed, gathering intelligence on the security breach that had compromised her team. The irony was almost unbearable. They were analyzing her mission while she served their drinks. General Patterson closed his folder with a sharp snap. We need to consider whether Oracle 9 should retain operational command authority. This level of mission failure suggests a fundamental problem with judgment. Sarah's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. She had pulled 4 wounded operators out of that kill zone while taking shrapnel in her shoulder and leg. The mission failure had nothing to do with her tactical decisions and everything to do with the intelligence leak she was currently investigating. Colonel Reeves reached for his coffee cup without looking up. Maybe we should stick to what works. Male operators, proven track records, less political complexity. The Admiral nodded slowly. There's something to be said for traditional approaches. We can't afford social experiments when lives are on the line. Sarah stared at the wall behind General Patterson's head, using every ounce of her training to maintain her cover. These men were discussing her career, her reputation, her life's work while she stood there in a black blazer holding their coffee pot like some invisible servant. The morning briefing would continue for another hour. She would refill their cups twice more, listening to them dissect her operations and question her competence. But none of them had any idea that Oracle 9 was standing right there, close enough to touch, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal exactly who they had been underestimating. 6 weeks earlier, Sarah had walked through the Pentagon's main entrance carrying a briefcase full of cleaning supplies and a cover story that could withstand any background check. The assignment had come directly from Admiral Morrison, the only person in naval special warfare who knew her real mission parameters. The intelligence leak had cost them more than the Somalia operation. 3 other missions had been compromised over the past 4 months, each one resulting in casualties that could have been prevented. Someone with access to the highest levels of operational planning was feeding information to hostile forces, and traditional investigation methods had failed completely. Sarah adjusted her security badge as she walked down the familiar corridor toward the war room. The morning routine had become second nature. Arrive at 0600 hours, brew coffee for the senior staff briefings, empty trash bins, and maintain complete invisibility while accessing the most classified discussions in the building. Her cover identity was perfect. Sarah Martinez, 32 years old, former Army logistics specialist with an honorable discharge and impeccable references. The personnel file showed someone competent, but unremarkable, exactly the kind of person who could move through secure areas without drawing attention. The real Sarah Martinez had died in a training accident 3 years ago. Naval intelligence had maintained her identity as a deep cover asset, updating her records and creating a paper trail that would satisfy even the most thorough security investigation. It was the kind of bureaucratic sleight of hand that made covert operations possible. She pushed her cleaning cart past the communications center, noting which officers had arrived early and which terminals were already active. Captain Rodriguez was reviewing satellite imagery from the Horn of Africa. Lieutenant Commander Hayes was updating personnel files for upcoming deployments. Every detail went into her mental database, building a comprehensive picture of information flow and access patterns. The war room door required 2 different security cards and a biometric scan. Sarah's civilian credentials granted her access during specific hours for cleaning and catering duties. It was a carefully orchestrated vulnerability, designed to let her observe the most sensitive discussions while appearing completely harmless. She began setting up the coffee service, her movements efficient and practiced. The industrial coffee maker required precise timing to have fresh pots ready when the senior staff arrived for their daily briefing. Everything had to appear routine, unremarkable, forgettable. The first officers arrived at 0730. General Patterson entered with his usual stern expression, carrying 3 different classified folders. Colonel Brooks followed, already engaged in a heated discussion about budget allocations with Admiral Chen. These men controlled billions in military spending and thousands of lives, but they barely registered her presence. This was exactly what made her so effective. In 6 weeks of operation, she had overheard discussions about 17 different classified missions, observed the handling of dozens of intelligence reports, and identified 12 possible sources for the security leak. None of the senior staff had ever looked at her twice. The breakthrough had come during week 4. Colonel Reeves had been discussing operational timelines with someone on a secure phone, mentioning specific dates and locations that matched the compromised missions. But proving his involvement required more than overheard conversations and suspicious timing. Sarah finished arranging the coffee cups and stepped back against the wall. Her position gave her a clear view of the entire conference table while keeping her in the background shadows. It was a technique she had learned during sniper training, becoming part of the environment until she was effectively invisible. The irony wasn't lost on her. These same officers had spent the past hour criticizing Oracle 9's leadership capabilities while she served their coffee. They questioned her tactical judgment, her ability to operate under pressure, her fundamental competence as a special operations commander. If they only knew that their coffee girl had more confirmed kills than any sniper in a room. Admiral Chen opened his briefing folder and began discussing recent intelligence developments. Sarah listened with the trained ear of someone who had spent her career analyzing enemy patterns and predicting battlefield outcomes. The intelligence was solid, but the distribution was too wide. Too many people had access to information that should have been compartmentalized. Colonel Reeves checked his watch and made a note in his personal calendar. The movement was subtle, but Sarah caught it. He was tracking something that correlated with the operational discussions, maintaining his own timeline of classified activities. It was exactly the kind of behavior pattern she had been watching for. General Patterson called for the morning briefing to begin. Sarah filled the first coffee cup and began her clockwise circuit around the table, invisible and ignored, gathering the intelligence that would eventually expose the traitor in their midst. The investigation was entering its final phase. She had identified the leak, documented the method, and gathered enough evidence to build a comprehensive case. Soon, her cover would no longer be necessary. But for now, she remained the unremarkable woman with the coffee pot, listening to military leaders question the competence of Oracle 9 while she planned their downfall. Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the Pentagon's labyrinthine corridors, each wheel rolling silently across polished linoleum. The morning routine had become muscle memory after 6 weeks. Level 3 security clearance areas at 0800 hours, executive offices by on and a 30, classified document storage before the 10 o'clock shift change. The cart contained everything needed to maintain her cover. Industrial cleaning supplies, fresh towels, vacuum attachments, and a hidden compartment containing surveillance equipment that could record conversations through 18 inches of reinforced concrete. To anyone watching, she was simply another member of the invisible army that kept the Pentagon functioning. Badge readers chirped as she moved between security zones. Each checkpoint recorded her presence, creating a digital trail that would satisfy any security audit. Sarah Martinez, civilian contractor, authorized for cleaning duties in sensitive areas, unremarkable and utterly forgettable. The communications center buzzed with activity as she entered. 12 workstations operated around the clock, processing encrypted messages from field units across 6 continents. Lieutenant Morrison glanced up from his terminal, then immediately returned to his screen. After 6 weeks, she had achieved perfect invisibility. Sarah emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces, her movements methodical and efficient. But her trained eye cataloged everything. Which terminals displayed active operational data? Which officers handled the most sensitive communications? Which security protocols were followed and which were quietly bypassed? Colonel Reeves sat at Workstation 7, reviewing what appeared to be routine personnel transfers. But Sarah had memorized his patterns. He only used that particular terminal when handling information that required additional encryption layers. The timing matched perfectly with her surveillance data. She moved to the next area, pushing her cart past the strategic planning office. Maps covered every wall surface, marked with colored pins representing troop movements, supply lines, and potential conflict zones. 3 junior officers worked quietly at drafting tables, updating operational boundaries based on the latest intelligence reports. The document storage facility required additional security protocols. Sarah swiped her badge and submitted to a retinal scan, then waited for the heavy door to cycle open. Inside, filing cabinets stretched from floor to ceiling, containing the operational history of American military interventions spanning 4 decades. This was where the real intelligence flowed. Every classified mission generated reports that eventually found their way to these climate-controlled archives. Sarah had been documenting which files were accessed, when, and by whom. The pattern was becoming clear. Certain operational folders showed signs of unauthorized handling. Documents that should have remained untouched were being reviewed by personnel without proper clearance levels. The access logs had been altered, but Sarah's photographic memory caught discrepancies that electronic audits missed. She continued her rounds, noting that Captain Rodriguez had arrived early again. His workstation displayed satellite imagery from Eastern Europe, marked with coordinates that matched recent special operations deployments. The information was current, sensitive, and exactly the kind of intelligence that had been compromised in previous leaks. The executive corridor required different protocols. Here, generals and admirals maintained offices that controlled military strategy across multiple theaters of operation. Sarah's cleaning schedule granted access during specific windows when the offices were unoccupied, allowing her to observe without detection. Admiral Chen's office contained maps of the South China Sea marked with submarine patrol routes. General Patterson's desk held briefing folders for upcoming congressional hearings. Colonel Brooks had left his computer terminal unlocked, displaying personnel evaluations for special operations commanders, including detailed assessments of Oracle 9's recent mission performance. Sarah noted everything while maintaining the appearance of routine cleaning duties. Dust the furniture, empty the wastebaskets, replace the water glasses, vacuum the carpet. Each task provided opportunities to observe, photograph, and document the intelligence flow that someone was systematically betraying. The pattern was becoming undeniable. Operational information was being accessed, copied, and transmitted to hostile forces with devastating precision. The Somalia mission had been compromised because someone with intimate knowledge of the insertion timeline had provided exact coordinates to enemy forces. 3 more levels of the Pentagon required her attention before the morning shift ended. Security checkpoints, biometric scanners, badge readers, all creating an electronic trail that confirmed her presence while concealing her true purpose. Sarah Martinez, civilian contractor, invisible and unremarkable, gathering the evidence that would expose a traitor operating at the highest levels of military command. The investigation was approaching its conclusion. Soon, her cover would no longer be necessary. But for now, she remained a ghost moving through the corridors of power, documenting every conversation, every file access, every security breach that had cost American lives in the field. By 10:30, her morning rounds were complete. The coffee service in the war room awaited, where senior officers would gather to discuss the very operations she had been protecting through weeks of careful surveillance. Sarah wheeled her cart into the war room as the senior staff settled into their chairs for the afternoon briefing. The morning session had ended with heated discussions about budget allocations, but the real intelligence sharing happened during these smaller, more focused meetings. Lieutenant Commander Hayes held the door open as she entered. "Thanks, sweetheart. Make sure you get the good coffee brewing today. We got some serious decisions to make." She nodded politely and began setting up the service station. The condescending tone was nothing new, but it still required conscious effort to maintain her cover. In her real life, Hayes was 2 ranks below her actual position in naval special warfare. Colonel Brooks was already reviewing classified folders when Captain Rodriguez approached him. "Think the coffee girl can handle making it strong enough today?" Yesterday's batch was weaker than recruit training. Rodriguez chuckled. "What do you expect? They probably hired her because she checked some diversity box, not because she knows anything about military preferences." Sarah measured coffee grounds with mechanical precision, keeping her expression neutral. These men had no idea that she had consumed more military coffee in forward operating bases than they had during their entire Pentagon careers combined. Admiral Chen entered carrying a secure tablet and immediately began discussing personnel assignments. The new special operations deployments require commanders with proven track records. No more experimental leadership appointments. General Patterson nodded in agreement. "The Somalia situation proves we need to stick with traditional selection criteria. Experience trumps everything else." Brooks leaned forward. "Speaking of Somalia, have we figured out what went wrong with that Oracle 9 character? The after-action reports suggest serious tactical errors." Sarah's hand tightened on the coffee scoop. She had written those after-action reports herself, documenting the intelligence failure that had compromised her team while carefully omitting details that would expose ongoing operations. Rodriguez pulled up a file on his tablet. Oracle 9 has an impressive kill record, but leadership under pressure seems questionable. Maybe special operations is different from regular command structure. Hayes laughed. Special operations attracts a certain personality type. Sometimes individual excellence doesn't translate to unit leadership. Sarah filled the coffee pot with water, her movements steady despite the growing tension. These officers were casually dismantling her professional reputation while she prepared their afternoon refreshments. The Admiral gestured toward his briefing materials. We have 3 upcoming missions that require senior operator involvement. I'm recommending we assign more experienced commanders to avoid another Somalia situation. Brooks opened his laptop. Makes sense. We can't afford political considerations when lives are on the line. Maybe Oracle 9 should stick to individual assignments rather than command positions. Sarah bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to draw blood. She had commanded 17 successful operations before Somalia, with 0 friendly casualties and mission success rates that exceeded every benchmark in the Special Operations Manual. Patterson reviewed his notes. The problem with these diversity initiatives is they prioritize demographics over capability. We end up with operators in positions they're not qualified to handle. Rodriguez nodded. Oracle 9 might be an excellent sniper, but that doesn't automatically make someone a good leader. Different skill sets entirely. The coffee maker began its brewing cycle as Sarah stepped back against the wall. 6 weeks of listening to these conversations had taught her patience, but today's discussion was testing every limit of her professional control. Chin scrolled through personnel files on his secure tablet. We need to consider reassigning Oracle 9 to a training position. Let someone with actual command experience handle the operational missions. Hayes reached for his water glass. Training assignment makes sense. Teaching individual skills is different from tactical leadership. Might be a better fit. Sarah stared at the wall behind Admiral Chen's head, using breathing techniques learned during survival training. These men were discussing ending her operational career based on incomplete information and institutional prejudice. Brooks closed his laptop with a satisfied expression. Good. We'll recommend Oracle 9 for reassignment to instructor duties. Keep individual capabilities where they belong without risking unit command. The coffee finished brewing as the officers continued their discussion. Sarah filled the first cup and began her circuit around the table, serving drinks to the men who were casually destroying her career while treating her like furniture. General Patterson accepted his coffee without acknowledgement. We'll finalize the Oracle 9 recommendation during tomorrow's personnel review. Time to make some practical decisions about special operations leadership. Sarah completed her rounds and returned to her position against the wall. Tomorrow's personnel review would determine her professional future, and she would be standing right here serving coffee while they made their final decision about Oracle 9's career. The evening briefing brought different faces to the war room. Sarah had learned that the most sensitive discussions happened after 1800 hours, when fewer personnel were present and security protocols relaxed slightly. She wheeled in fresh coffee supplies as Colonel Reeves began distributing classified folders marked with red security tape. Admiral Chen opened the first folder and spread aerial photographs across the mahogany table. The Somalia extraction point shows clear evidence of pre-positioned enemy forces. They knew exactly where our team would be. Sarah's pulse quickened as she recognized the satellite imagery. She had been on that ridge, calling for extraction while enemy fire pinned down her wounded teammates. The photographs showed the aftermath, but they told only part of the story. General Patterson pointed to specific coordinates on the largest photograph. Oracle 9's team was inserted here at 0300 hours. Radio contact was maintained until 0306, then complete communications blackout. Reeves nodded grimly. The enemy was waiting in prepared positions. Mortars, machine gun nests, coordinated fields of fire. Someone gave them our exact timeline. Sarah filled coffee cups while listening to them analyze her own mission. The communications blackout had lasted exactly 4 minutes, not the extended period they were describing. She had maintained contact through backup frequencies while coordinating the tactical withdrawal. Chen traced movement patterns on the map. The team was forced to abandon their primary objective and retreat through this valley. Classic ambush scenario with no viable escape routes. That was completely wrong. Sarah remembered every detail of that valley approach. She had identified 3 separate extraction points during mission planning, and they had successfully used the secondary route when the primary became compromised. Patterson reviewed written reports. Oracle 9's after-action documentation indicates confusion about enemy strength and positioning. The tactical assessment was clearly inadequate. Sarah's jaw clenched. Her after-action report had been deliberately vague about enemy positions to protect ongoing intelligence operations in the region. These officers were interpreting operational security as tactical confusion. Brooks entered the room carrying additional folders. I've been reviewing communications intercepts from that time period. The enemy had specific information about our insertion methods and extraction timing. Reeves looked up from his photographs. How specific are we talking about? Brooks opened his folder and read from a transcript. They knew helicopter approach vectors, team composition, and primary objective targets. This wasn't lucky intelligence gathering. Sarah continued her coffee service while listening to classified information that painted her mission as a complete failure. The truth was more complicated. They had achieved 70% of their primary objectives before the ambush, including elimination of 3 high-value targets. Admiral Chun highlighted coordinates on his map. The insertion point was compromised from the beginning. Oracle 9 should have recognized the tactical situation and aborted the mission. That was the most frustrating mischaracterization yet. Sarah had identified potential compromise indicators during the approach phase, but mission parameters required proceeding unless direct enemy contact was confirmed. She had followed orders precisely. Patterson closed his folder. The tactical errors begin with poor situational awareness. Oracle 9's team walked directly into a prepared kill zone. Sarah gripped the coffee pot handle tighter. They hadn't walked into anything. She had detected the ambush preparations and adjusted their approach accordingly, which was why they had suffered only 3 casualties instead of total team elimination. Reeves checked his secure phone for messages. Intelligence suggests the enemy received detailed briefings about our operational methods. Someone with access to mission planning provided comprehensive tactical information. Brooks nodded. The level of detail indicates source access to the highest classification levels. This wasn't casual information sharing. Sarah finished filling the coffee cups and stepped back against the wall. These officers were analyzing her mission while she stood 10 feet away, unable to correct their fundamental misunderstandings about what had actually happened in Somalia. Chen pointed to evacuation routes marked on his map. Oracle 9's extraction took 6 hours instead of the planned 90 minutes. The delay resulted in additional enemy reinforcements and increased casualty risk. The extraction had taken 6 hours because Sarah had refused to abandon 2 wounded operators who couldn't move under their own power. She had held defensive positions while calling in close air support, then personally carried one of the wounded for 3 miles through hostile territory. Patterson made notes in his personal folder. This level of mission failure suggests Oracle 9 lacks the tactical judgment necessary for command positions. Individual marksmanship skills don't automatically translate to unit leadership capability. Reeves gathered his photographs. The Somalia operation proves we need more experienced commanders for sensitive missions. Oracle 9 should be reassigned to training duties where individual skills can be utilized without risking unit command. Sarah maintained her position against the wall, listening to senior officers systematically dismantle her operational record based on incomplete information and classified restrictions that prevented accurate mission documentation. The evening briefing continued for another 30 minutes. She refilled their coffee twice more while they discussed reassigning Oracle 9 to instructor positions, completely unaware that the subject of their analysis was standing right there, serving their drinks and documenting their conversation for her ongoing investigation. The secure phone in the war room rang at 20:30 hours, its sharp tone cutting through the quiet evening air. Sarah was finishing her final cleaning rounds when Admiral Morrison's voice echoed through the intercom system, calling for immediate assembly of senior command staff. Emergency briefing in 30 minutes. All department heads report to the war room immediately. Classification level Alpha 7. Sarah checked her watch and began preparing for an unscheduled evening session. Alpha 7 classification meant operational intelligence requiring the highest security protocols. Only 12 people in the Pentagon held clearance for that level of information. She wheeled in additional coffee supplies and began setting up for extended discussions. Emergency briefings typically lasted several hours, especially when they involved active operational theater updates. Her cover assignment required maintaining readiness for any schedule changes. Colonel Reeves arrived first, carrying 2 secure tablets and wearing the grim expression that accompanied crisis management situations. He nodded briefly at Sarah before claiming his usual seat at the conference table and immediately beginning secure communications with field commanders. Admiral Chun entered with General Patterson. Both men engaged in intense discussion about troop movements in Eastern Europe. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they noticed Sarah organizing the coffee service, switching to coded references that indicated highly classified subject matter. Sarah maintained her routine while noting the tension levels. Emergency briefings meant real-time operational developments, the kind of situations where intelligence leaks could cost lives within hours instead of weeks. Her investigation had identified the source, but tonight might provide the final evidence needed. Captain Rodriguez hurried through the door, carrying multiple classified folders marked with red tape and special handling instructions. His usual casual demeanor had been replaced by the focused intensity that accompanied active crisis management situations. The war room began filling with senior officers responding to the emergency assembly call. Lieutenant Commander Hayes arrived with communications equipment for maintaining contact with field units. Colonel Brooks brought strategic planning materials for rapid deployment scenarios. Sarah finished preparing the coffee service and positioned herself against the wall where she could observe the entire table. Emergency briefings provided the most valuable intelligence because normal security protocols were often bypassed in favor of rapid information sharing. Admiral Morrison entered at exactly 20:20 hours, his presence immediately commanding attention from everyone in the room. He carried a single folder marked with classification symbols Sarah had never seen before, indicating intelligence so sensitive that even its existence was compartmentalized. Morrison surveyed the assembled officers before taking his position at the head of the conference table. "Gentlemen, we have a developing situation that requires immediate tactical response. What I'm about to share cannot leave this room under any circumstances." Sarah poured the first coffee cup, her movements automatic while her attention focused completely on the upcoming briefing. Morrison's reputation for handling the most sensitive operations meant tonight's discussion would involve information at the highest classification levels. The Admiral opened his folder and began distributing photographs to each officer. These images were taken 6 hours ago by reconnaissance assets in the Horn of Africa. "We have confirmation of hostile activity requiring immediate special operations response." Sarah continued her coffee service while observing which officers received specific materials. The distribution pattern indicated operational planning roles, with different levels of information access based on individual responsibilities and clearance levels. Morrison activated the secure communications system connecting the war room to field commanders across multiple time zones. "We have assets in position for immediate deployment, but this operation requires coordination at the highest levels of command authority." The emergency briefing was beginning just as Sarah completed her coffee rounds. She returned to her position against the wall, invisible and ignored, ready to observe the most sensitive military discussions while maintaining her cover as unremarkable civilian support staff. Tonight would determine whether her 6-week investigation concluded successfully or whether the intelligence leak would compromise another critical operation. The stakes had never been higher, and Sarah Martinez, civilian contractor, was perfectly positioned to document everything. Admiral Morrison spread the reconnaissance photographs across the conference table, each image marked with timestamp coordinates showing real-time intelligence from hostile territory. The war room's overhead lighting cast sharp shadows across the classified materials as senior officers leaned forward to examine the evidence. We have confirmation of enemy forces massing at these coordinates in Somalia. Morrison pointed to specific locations on the satellite imagery. Intelligence indicates preparation for significant offensive operations against Allied positions in the region. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the terrain. These are the same coordinates where her team had conducted operations 6 weeks ago. The mission these officers had been criticizing without understanding the larger strategic context. General Patterson studied the photographs with a magnifying glass. The enemy's strength appears significantly greater than previous assessments. How reliable is this intelligence? Morrison activated a secure terminal displaying real-time communications intercepts. We have multiple confirmation sources, including human intelligence assets who have provided detailed tactical assessments. The situation requires immediate special operations response. Colonel Reeves checked his secure tablet for updated troop movement data. Do we have assets in position for rapid deployment? This level of enemy activity suggests time-critical operational requirements. Sarah poured coffee with mechanical precision while listening to discussions about the mission she had actually planned and executed. The larger strategic context was finally becoming clear, revealing information that had been compartmentalized during her original briefing. Admiral Chen reviewed communication transcripts on his laptop. The intelligence suggests enemy forces received detailed information about our previous operations in this region. They've adapted their tactics based on knowledge of our insertion methods and extraction procedures. Morrison nodded grimly. That's exactly why tonight's briefing is classified Alpha 7. We have confirmed evidence of intelligence compromise at the highest levels, affecting multiple operations across this theater. Sarah's grip tightened on the coffee pot. This was the security breach she had been investigating for 6 weeks, the leak that had cost American lives and compromised her Somalia mission. Tonight's briefing would finally reveal the full scope of the betrayal. Brooks opened his classified folder and began reading operational summaries. Previous missions in this region show consistent patterns of enemy preparation. They knew our exact timing, approach vectors, and tactical objectives. Patterson highlighted specific coordinates on his map. The Somalia operation from 6 weeks ago was compromised from the initial planning stages. Oracle 9's team walked into prepared ambush positions because the enemy had detailed advance warning. Morrison pulled up personnel files on the secure terminal. Oracle 9's mission was actually a strategic success despite the intelligence compromise. The team achieved their primary objectives while operating under conditions that should have resulted in total unit loss. Sarah nearly dropped the coffee pot. Morrison was providing information that directly contradicted 6 weeks of criticism from these same officers. Her mission had been successful, not the failure they had been describing. Admiral Chun looked up from his communications intercepts. Oracle 9 maintained operational effectiveness despite catastrophic intelligence failure. The after-action reports suggested significant tactical errors. Morrison shook his head. The after-action reports were deliberately misleading to protect ongoing operations. Oracle 9's team neutralized 7 high-value targets while operating under direct enemy observation. The tactical execution was exceptional. Reeves checked his classified materials. If Oracle 9 succeeded under compromised conditions, why have we been discussing reassignment to training duties? Morrison's expression hardened. Because someone in this building has been systematically undermining special operations effectiveness by leaking classified information to hostile forces. Oracle 9's apparent failures were actually the result of betrayal at the command level. Sarah stepped back against the wall, her mind racing. Morrison was revealing the true purpose of her Somalia mission while she stood 10 feet away serving coffee. The larger investigation was finally being exposed. General Patterson closed his folder. You're suggesting someone with access to Alpha 7 intelligence has been compromising operations? Morrison activated additional security protocols, sealing the war room from electronic surveillance. I'm not suggesting it, General. I'm confirming it. We have identified the source of the intelligence leak, and tonight's operation will provide final confirmation. Brooks leaned forward intently. How long has this investigation been ongoing? Morrison glanced briefly at Sarah before responding. 6 weeks. We've been running a comprehensive counterintelligence operation to identify and document the security breach. Tonight's briefing will conclude that investigation. Sarah realized that Morrison's presence meant her cover operation was approaching its end. Soon, her true identity would be revealed to the officers who had spent weeks questioning Oracle 9's competence while she served their coffee. Admiral Morrison pulled up additional classified files on his secure terminal, the screen displaying operational records that had been sealed at the highest classification levels. Sarah watched from her position against the wall as he prepared to reveal information that would fundamentally change the dynamic in the war room. Colonel Reeves shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Admiral, if Oracle 9's mission was actually successful, why have the after-action reports indicated tactical failures and leadership problems? Morrison's fingers moved across the keyboard, accessing files that required his personal authorization codes. The after-action reports were part of the counterintelligence operation. We needed the leak source to believe their sabotage was effective while we gathered evidence of their activities. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. Morrison was about to expose the entire investigation, including details about her own role in the operation. 6 weeks of careful cover work was approaching its conclusion. General Patterson reviewed his notes with growing concern. You're suggesting that Oracle 9 has been operating under false pretenses for 6 weeks? That the mission criticisms were deliberately fabricated? Morrison activated additional security protocols, ensuring the war room was completely isolated from external surveillance. Oracle 9 has been conducting the most sensitive counterintelligence operation in Pentagon history. Every conversation in this room has been monitored and documented. Admiral Chun looked around the conference table with sudden awareness. Monitored by whom? We've been discussing classified operations under the assumption of secure communications. Morrison's expression remained neutral. The monitoring has been conducted by assets with appropriate clearance levels. Every person in this room has been under observation to identify the source of intelligence leaks that have compromised multiple operations. Sarah gripped the coffee pot tighter as she realized Morrison was about to reveal her identity. The careful balance she had maintained for 6 weeks was about to collapse, transforming her from invisible support staff to the center of attention. Brooks pulled up personnel files on his tablet. Oracle 9 has been here, in the Pentagon. We've been discussing operational assessments while the subject of those assessments was present. Morrison nodded slowly. Oracle 9 has been gathering evidence of security breaches while maintaining deep cover. The investigation required complete operational security to prevent detection by hostile intelligence assets. Reeves checked his secure communications device, suddenly aware that his activities had been under surveillance. How long has this monitoring been active? What level of observation are we discussing? Morrison accessed additional classified files. 6 weeks of comprehensive surveillance. Every conversation, every file access, every communication has been documented and analyzed. We now have complete evidence of intelligence compromise at the senior command level. Sarah stepped back further against the wall, trying to remain invisible as the officers began to understand the implications of Morrison's revelation. Their comfortable assumptions about security and privacy were being systematically dismantled. Patterson closed his briefing materials. Admiral, are you suggesting someone at this table has been compromising classified operations? Morrison's pause lasted exactly 3 seconds. I'm stating that we have identified the source of intelligence leaks that resulted in American casualties in Somalia compromised operations across multiple theaters. Admiral Chun turned off his secure tablet and pushed it away from him. The evidence you've gathered during this investigation. How comprehensive is the documentation? Morrison pulled up file directories showing thousands of recorded conversations and documented interactions. Complete surveillance records, communication intercepts, file access logs, and behavioral analysis. Everything necessary to prosecute intelligence crimes at the highest levels. Sarah watched Colonel Reeves carefully as Morrison spoke. His body language had changed dramatically since the Admiral began discussing surveillance and evidence gathering. The confident demeanor was being replaced by visible tension. Brooks looked around the war room with new awareness. Oracle 9 has been here the entire time, listening to our discussions about mission failures and leadership inadequacies. Morrison glanced briefly at Sarah before responding. Oracle 9 has maintained perfect operational security while gathering evidence that will conclude this investigation. Tonight's briefing represents the final phase of the counterintelligence operation. Reeves stood up abruptly and moved toward the secure communications terminal. Admiral, I need to verify some operational details with field commanders. This information changes my assessment of current mission parameters. Morrison's voice carried unmistakable authority. Colonel Reeves, please return to your seat. This briefing is not concluded, and no communications are authorized until we complete the intelligence review. Sarah realized the moment of revelation was approaching rapidly. Morrison's careful orchestration was bringing the investigation to its climax, and soon her 6 weeks of invisible surveillance would transform into direct confrontation with the intelligence leak source. Admiral Morrison opened a new classification folder marked with security symbols that made several officers lean back in their chairs. The Alpha 7 designation meant information so sensitive that even acknowledging its existence required special authorization protocols. Colonel Reeves remained standing near the communications terminal, his earlier confidence replaced by visible agitation. Admiral, I really do need to contact field commanders about the operational updates. This intelligence changes everything about our deployment schedules. Morrison's voice carried unmistakable finality. Colonel, your communications privileges are suspended pending completion of this briefing. Please return to your assigned seat immediately. Sarah watched the power dynamic shift as Reeves reluctantly moved back to the conference table. His behavior patterns had become increasingly erratic as Morrison revealed more details about the counterintelligence operation. General Patterson opened his secure tablet and began reviewing operational timelines. Admiral, if Oracle 9 has been conducting surveillance for 6 weeks, what specific evidence has been gathered about intelligence compromise? Morrison activated a large display screen showing detailed charts of information flow and access patterns. We have documented unauthorized file access, communication intercepts, and behavioral analysis indicating systematic intelligence betrayal over a 4-month period. The screen displayed a complex network diagram showing how classified information moved through Pentagon systems. Red lines indicated unauthorized access points, while yellow markers showed correlation between leaked intelligence and enemy preparedness levels. Admiral Chun studied the display with growing understanding. The pattern shows someone with senior-level access providing detailed operational intelligence to hostile forces. The scope is comprehensive and devastating. Sarah refilled coffee cups while observing the mounting tension. Morrison's presentation was systematically building toward the revelation she had been gathering evidence for during 6 weeks of careful surveillance. Brooks pointed to specific data points on the display. These access patterns show someone reviewing classified materials immediately before operational compromises. The timing correlation is undeniable. Morrison highlighted additional evidence markers. The intelligence leak source has access files related to 17 different operations, including detailed tactical plans, personnel assignments, and extraction procedures. Each access preceded enemy preparedness by exactly 48 hours. Colonel Reeves shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Admiral, This level of surveillance seems excessive. Are you certain the intelligence gathering was conducted through proper authorization channels? Morrison's expression hardened noticeably. Colonel, the authorization came directly from the Secretary of Defense after American operators died due to intelligence compromise. Every surveillance action was conducted under proper legal authority. Sarah positioned herself where she could observe all the officers simultaneously. Morrison's careful orchestration was approaching the climax, and she needed to be ready for whatever revelation followed. Patterson reviewed the network diagram more closely. The access patterns suggest someone familiar with operational security protocols. This isn't casual information gathering, but systematic intelligence harvesting by someone with intimate knowledge of our procedures. Morrison nodded grimly. The leak source understands exactly which information provides maximum tactical advantage to enemy forces. The selection process indicates advanced training in intelligence operations and strategic analysis. Admiral Chin highlighted specific data points. The timing suggests real-time coordination with hostile intelligence services. Someone has been providing operational updates during active mission phases. Sarah noticed Colonel Reeves checking his personal communication device despite Morrison's explicit prohibition. His violations of security protocols were becoming increasingly obvious to everyone in the room. Brooks closed his tablet and leaned forward. Admiral, when will you identify the source of these intelligence leaks? The evidence seems comprehensive enough to support definitive conclusions. Morrison glanced at his watch before responding. The identification will occur during this briefing. We are currently in the final phase of evidence presentation before revealing the leak's source identity. Reeves stood up again, ignoring previous instructions. Admiral, I have urgent operational responsibilities that cannot wait for extended briefings. My field commanders require immediate guidance about deployment changes. Morrison's voice carried absolute authority. Colonel Reeves, you will remain in this room until the briefing concludes. Your communications privileges are revoked, and any attempt to leave will result in immediate security detention. Sarah realized the confrontation was imminent. Morrison had systematically presented evidence while building pressure on the leak source, and Colonel Reeves was responding exactly as predicted. The revelation was moments away. General Patterson looked around the conference table with new awareness. Admiral, are you suggesting the intelligence leak source is present in this room? Morrison reached for a new classification folder. The leak source has been under direct observation throughout this investigation. Oracle 9 has documented every action, every communication, every security violation necessary to build a comprehensive case. Sarah stepped closer to the wall as Morrison prepared to reveal the conclusion of her 6-week investigation. Admiral Morrison opened the final classification folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper marked with the highest security designations. The war room fell completely silent as he prepared to conclude 6 weeks of intensive counterintelligence operations. Gentlemen, the intelligence leak source has been identified through comprehensive surveillance and evidence gathering. The individual responsible for compromising American operations and causing friendly casualties has been under direct observation throughout this investigation. Sarah felt every muscle in her body tense as Morrison prepared to reveal the conclusion of her undercover mission. 6 weeks of invisible surveillance was about to transform into direct confrontation. Colonel Reeves moved toward the door despite explicit instructions to remain seated. Admiral, I cannot participate in whatever accusations you're planning to make. My operational responsibilities require immediate attention. Morrison's voice cut through the room like a blade. Colonel Reeves, return to your seat immediately. Security personnel are stationed outside this room with orders to detain anyone attempting unauthorized departure. General Patterson studied the evidence display with growing understanding. Admiral, the access patterns and timing correlations point to someone with intimate knowledge of our operational procedures. The leak source understands exactly which intelligence provides maximum tactical advantage. Morrison nodded slowly. The leak source has been selling detailed operational intelligence to hostile forces for a minimum of 4 months. 17 operations have been compromised, resulting in 43 American casualties. Sarah gripped the coffee pot handle as Morrison approached the moment of revelation. Everything she had observed and documented was about to be exposed in front of the officers who had been questioning Oracle 9's competence. Admiral Chun reviewed the network diagram one final time. The evidence is overwhelming. Someone in this room has been systematically betraying American military operations. Morrison stood and faced the assembled officers directly. The intelligence leak source is Colonel James Reeves. We have documented evidence of unauthorized file access, communication with hostile intelligence services, and financial compensation for classified information. Reeves exploded from his chair. That's completely false. I demand to contact my legal representation immediately. These accusations are baseless and professionally destructive. Morrison remained calm. Colonel, your secure communications during the past 6 weeks have been monitored and recorded. We have transcripts of your conversations with foreign intelligence contacts, including specific details about operational timing and tactical procedures. Sarah watched as the other officers turned toward Reeves with expressions of shock and disgust. 6 weeks of careful investigation was finally being revealed in front of the men who had been unknowingly working alongside a traitor. Brooks pulled out his secure tablet and began reviewing Reeves's access history. The correlation is undeniable. Every compromised operation correlates with Colonel Reeves's file access within 48 hours. Patterson closed his briefing materials with obvious anger. 17 operations compromised. 43 casualties. How much money was American blood worth? Colonel? Reeves backed toward the wall, his composure completely shattered. You cannot prove financial motivation. Correlation doesn't establish causation or intent. Morrison activated the room's audio system and played a recorded conversation. Reeves's voice filled the war room, discussing tactical details with someone speaking accented English about payment schedules and operational intelligence requirements. Admiral Chin stood up slowly. My God, we've been working alongside a traitor for months. How many more operations would have been compromised? Morrison turned towards Sarah, who was still standing against the wall holding the coffee pot. The investigation was concluded through the exceptional work of Oracle 9, who maintained perfect operational security while gathering evidence under the most challenging circumstances. Sarah felt the room's attention shift toward her as Morrison continued. Oracle 9 has been operating under deep cover for 6 weeks, documenting every aspect of the intelligence compromise while maintaining perfect invisibility. General Patterson looked between Morrison and Sarah with growing comprehension. Oracle 9 has been here, in this room, during our briefings? Morrison nodded. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce Commander Sarah Martinez, call sign Oracle 9, United States Navy SEALs. She has been conducting counterintelligence operations while you discussed her mission performance and professional competence. The coffee pot slipped from Sarah's hand and shattered against the floor, the sound echoing through the stunned silence that followed Morrison's revelation. 6 weeks of invisible surveillance had just transformed her from furniture into the center of attention. Colonel Brooks stared at her with complete shock. The coffee girl is Oracle 9? The sniper we've been criticizing is standing right there? Admiral Chin's face went pale. We discussed reassigning her to training duties while she served our coffee. We questioned her tactical judgment while she documented our conversations. Sarah straightened to her full height, dropping the submissive posture she had maintained for 6 weeks. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded life-and-death operations. Colonel Reeves, you killed 3 of my operators in Somalia. Your intelligence betrayal cost American lives. The silence in the war room stretched for exactly 7 seconds before General Patterson pushed back from the conference table, his chair scraping against the polished floor. His face had gone completely white as the implications of Morrison's revelation crashed over him like a tidal wave. We've been discussing Oracle 9's tactical incompetence while she stood right there serving our coffee. Patterson's voice barely rose above a whisper. She heard every word we said about reassigning her to training duties. Admiral Chun sat frozen in his chair, staring at Sarah with an expression of absolute shock. The Somalia mission failures we've been analyzing for weeks. She was there. She lived through everything we've been criticizing. Sarah maintained her military bearing despite the emotional hurricane raging inside her chest. For 6 weeks, she had listened to these officers systematically dismantle her professional reputation while she poured their coffee and emptied their trash bins. Colonel Brooks slowly turned his secure tablet face down on the table. The after-action reports we reviewed, the tactical assessments we questioned. Oracle 9 wrote those reports while protecting operational security for this investigation. Morrison stepped forward, his presence commanding the room's attention. Commander Martinez documented every conversation, every security breach, every instance of intelligence compromise while maintaining perfect operational cover. Colonel Reeves pressed himself against the far wall, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. The financial records, the communication intercepts, the correlation between file access and enemy preparedness levels had created an inescapable web of evidence. Admiral Chun found his voice first. Commander Martinez, how much of our criticism did you hear? How many times did we question your competence while you were gathering evidence against a traitor? Sarah's response carried the weight of 6 weeks of suppressed anger. Every briefing, Admiral, every discussion about my tactical failures, my leadership inadequacies, my unsuitability for command positions. I heard all of it. General Patterson rubbed his forehead with both hands. We discussed your kill record, your mission performance, your professional qualifications while you stood there invisible. The level of restraint that must have required is extraordinary. Brooks looked up from his tablet with obvious embarrassment. The diversity initiative comments. The suggestions that you were promoted for political reasons rather than capability. You heard every word. Sarah nodded slowly. I heard Colonel Reeves suggest that Oracle 9 was selected to check demographic boxes rather than tactical competence. I documented his comments along with everything else. Morrison activated the room's recording system. Commander Martinez maintained perfect operational discipline under circumstances that would have broken most operators. She gathered critical intelligence while enduring professional character assassination. Admiral Chun turned toward Reeves with unconcealed disgust. You compromised her mission in Somalia. 3 Navy SEALs died because you sold their operational details to enemy forces. Reeves tried to speak, but Morrison cut him off immediately. Colonel Reeves, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a military court-martial. Sarah stepped away from the wall where she had spent 6 weeks observing and moved toward the conference table. The transformation from invisible support staff to recognized Special Operations Commander was jarring for everyone in the room. General Patterson stood up slowly. Commander Martinez, the Somalia operation that we've been criticizing as a tactical failure. What actually happened during that mission? Sarah's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded under fire. We achieved 70% of our primary objectives despite operating under compromised conditions. I maintained unit cohesion while extracting wounded operators through 3 miles of hostile territory. Brooks closed his briefing folder. The extraction delay we criticized. You're carrying wounded operators who couldn't move under their own power. Sarah nodded. I refused to abandon my team. The 6-hour extraction timeline resulted from tactical decisions to preserve American lives rather than mission efficiency. Admiral Chun shook his head slowly. We questioned your leadership capability while you demonstrated exactly the kind of tactical judgment that defines exceptional command. Morrison moved toward the door where security personnel were waiting. Colonel Reeves will be transferred to military detention pending court-martial proceedings. The evidence gathered during this investigation will support charges of espionage, treason, and causing death through intelligence betrayal. Sarah watched as security officers entered the room and moved toward Reeves. 6 weeks of investigation was concluding with the arrest of the traitor who had cost American lives through systematic intelligence compromise. General Patterson approached Sarah with obvious respect. "Commander Martinez, I owe you a personal apology. We questioned your professional competence while you conducted one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence operations in Pentagon history." Admiral Chun extended his hand. "The level of operational discipline you demonstrated is extraordinary. Maintaining cover while enduring professional criticism requires exceptional character." Sarah accepted the handshake while watching Colonel Reeves being escorted from the war room in custody. The man who had betrayed her Somalia mission was finally facing consequences for his actions. Morrison addressed the remaining officers. "This investigation is classified at the highest levels. Commander Martinez's operational cover will be maintained until all related intelligence matters are resolved." The war room fell silent again as the magnitude of the evening's revelations settled over everyone present. Oracle 9 had been hiding in plain sight for 6 weeks, documenting their conversations while they unknowingly criticized her performance and worked alongside a traitor. 3 days after Colonel Reeves's arrest, Sarah stood in Admiral Morrison's office reviewing the final documentation of her counterintelligence operation. The investigation had concluded successfully, but the aftermath required careful management to protect ongoing operations and maintain security protocols. Morrison closed the classified folder containing 6 weeks of surveillance records. "Commander Martinez, your operational performance exceeded every expectation. The evidence you gathered will ensure Colonel Reeves faces appropriate consequences for his betrayal." Sarah had traded her civilian contractor uniform for navy dress blues, the silver trident on her chest catching the morning sunlight streaming through Morrison's office windows. After 6 weeks of invisibility, wearing her actual rank insignia felt almost foreign. The Admiral activated his secure terminal and began updating her official personnel file. "The Somalia mission assessment will be corrected to reflect the actual tactical situation. Your leadership under compromised conditions was exceptional, not the failure that appeared in the preliminary reports." Sarah nodded while reviewing the financial evidence that had sealed Reeves's fate. Bank transfers totaling $200,000 over 4 months, each payment correlating exactly with compromised operations and American casualties. Morrison pulled up communication transcripts showing Reeves's conversations with foreign intelligence contacts. He provided detailed tactical information about insertion methods, extraction procedures, and operational timing. The level of betrayal was comprehensive and devastating. A knock on the office door interrupted their discussion. General Patterson entered carrying a formal commendation folder, followed by Admiral Chun and Colonel Brooks. Their expressions showed a mixture of respect and embarrassment that had become familiar over the past 3 days. General Patterson approached Sarah's desk. "Commander Martinez, we wanted to present this personally. The Distinguished Service Medal for exceptional performance during counterintelligence operations." Sarah accepted the commendation while maintaining military bearing. The recognition fell hollow compared to the 3 operators who had died in Somalia because of Reeves's intelligence betrayal. Admiral Chun stepped forward. "Commander, we also wanted to apologize for our comments during the past 6 weeks. Our assessments of your tactical performance were completely inappropriate and factually incorrect." Brooks opened his secure tablet showing updated mission evaluations. "The Somalia operation has been reclassified as a strategic success. Your tactical decisions prevented total unit loss while achieving primary objectives under compromised conditions." Morrison gestured toward the conference table. "The Pentagon investigation identified security vulnerabilities that extend beyond Colonel Reeves's activities. Your surveillance documented systemic problems that require comprehensive reform." Sarah reviewed the broader implications of her investigation. 17 operations have been compromised over 4 months, affecting multiple theaters and resulting in 43 casualties. The damage assessment would continue for weeks. General Patterson closed his briefing folder. "Commander, what are your plans for future assignments? Your counterintelligence capabilities are obviously exceptional, Sarah considered the question while looking out Morrison's office window toward the Pentagon courtyard, where hundreds of military personnel went about their daily routines. The investigation had been successful, but the cost in American lives made celebration impossible. Morrison activated additional security protocols. Commander Martinez will be returning to operational assignments with Naval Special Warfare. Her cover identity will be maintained for potential future intelligence operations. Admiral Chin nodded approvingly. The special operations community needs commanders with your tactical judgment and operational discipline. The Somalia mission proves your capability under the most challenging circumstances. Brooks reviewed his updated personnel assessments. The criticism we voiced during the past 6 weeks was based on incomplete information and institutional prejudice. Your actual performance record speaks for itself. Sarah stood and moved toward the window overlooking the Pentagon's central courtyard. 6 weeks of investigation had exposed a traitor and prevented future intelligence compromise, but 3 good operators were still dead because of delayed justice. Morrison joined her at the window. Commander, the intelligence you gathered will prevent future casualties. Colonel Reeves's betrayal would have continued indefinitely without your intervention. General Patterson approached with obvious respect. The level of operational discipline you demonstrated is unprecedented. Maintaining cover while enduring professional criticism requires exceptional character. Sarah turned back toward the assembled officers. The mission was successful because it prevented additional American casualties. Personal vindication is secondary to operational effectiveness. Admiral Chun extended his hand. Commander Martinez, it has been an honor working with someone of your caliber. The special operations community is fortunate to have your continued service. Morrison activated his secure terminal one final time. The investigation files will remain classified indefinitely. Commander Martinez's operational methods will be studied for future counterintelligence training. Sarah gathered her briefing materials and prepared to return to Naval Special Warfare Command. The 6-week assignment had concluded successfully, but the memory of serving coffee to officers who questioned her competence would remain permanently etched in her operational experience. As she walked toward Morrison's office door, Sarah reflected on the investigation's broader implications. Military leadership had been forced to confront their own prejudices while learning that exceptional operators could hide in plain sight, gathering intelligence while appearing completely invisible. The Pentagon's corridors buzzed with their usual activity as Sarah made her way toward the exit. Behind her, Admiral Morrison was already planning the next phase of security reforms based on lessons learned during Operation Coffee Service, the counterintelligence mission that had exposed systemic vulnerabilities at the highest levels of military command. Oracle 9 was returning to active operations, but the Pentagon would never again underestimate who might be listening when they discussed the competence of America's most elite warriors.